it's Tina, and I am back with a quick swatch and review video for the Urban Decay Vice4 palette that just debuted. And we're going to jump into the swatches now so you can see those first, and then we'll jump into the review. Here's an overall look at the colors. First we have Bones, Grip, Deadbeat, Beatdown, and Pandemonium. Then we have Framed, Fastball, 1985, Underhand, Harlot, followed by Discreet, Grasshopper, C-Note, Arctic, Robbery, Bitter, Flame, Low, and last up, Crowbar and Delete. Alright, so let's start out with the first shade, which is Bones, which is described as an oyster satin with pearl. And this one is a pale champagne shade, and it is a shimmery shade. Has great pigmentation and actually showed up pretty well. Then we have the shade Grip, which is described as a taupe matte with iridescent micro glitter. This one was the most disappointing of the palette for me. It has a very sheer taupe base. It's hard to build up the pigmentation, and all I'm getting is the micro shimmer. Just a mess. And then we have the shade Deadbeat, which is described as a black satin with micro glitter. This one actually has really good pigmentation. It's more of a sooty charcoal black shade with that silvery shimmer. Actually a very nice shade as well. Then we have the shade Beatdown, which is described as a deep metallic violet with blue micro glitter. This one is gorgeous. Can you see this? I did a tutorial with that color. Really beautiful shimmery purple shade. And then we have the shade Pandemonium, which is described as a metallic plum with iridescent micro glitter. And to me, it's a dusty, muted, dirty plum shade with tons of silver glitter. And here are those 5 top shades. And the purple is my favorite, of course. And then the plum shade and the black shade have great pigmentation, but a lot of fallout. And the shimmery shade Bones is a beautiful shimmer shade. And the shade Grip is just a complete failure, and this one should have just been left out totally. Then we have the second row with the shade Framed, which is described as a light neutral matte satin, and it is a beigey shade. It does take some building up, but it is good to use as a blending shade in the crease or as a highlight. Then we have the shade Fastball, which is described as a metallic peachy pink with pink micro glitter. This one is absolutely gorgeous. It's a peachy pink coral shade. It builds up great. It has great pigmentation, and the shimmer is just really beautiful. Followed by the shade 1985, which is described as a metallic fuchsia with fuchsia micro glitter. This one is a little bit of a trickier shade. It takes some building up, but it can be built up to good pigmentation, and the shimmer is really minute, so you barely see it. Then you have the shade Underhand, which is described as a burgundy brown satin. And this one is a shimmery shade. It's not highly frosted, but it is a burgundy shade with a touch of brown to it. It's a great shade for the fall season, and it blends nicely, and it has good pigmentation. Then we have the shade Harlot, which is described as a metallic lavender. And it is to me, a shimmery frosted lavender or lilac shade. Great pigmentation again, and really smooth. It really blends nicely. And this entire row had good color payoff, great pigmentation. The only one that was a little bit more sheer was Framed. Moving on, we have the shade Discreet, which is described as a soft, dusty mauve matte. And this one took a little bit of building up, but it does build up if you give it a little bit of a chance. It is a matte, dusty, purpley toned nude shade. It's really nice and great for blending in the crease. Then we have one of my favorite shades, Grasshopper, which is described as a metallic emerald with green micro glitter. This one is truly beautiful. It's a rich grass green, and it has great pigmentation. Not a lot of chunky glitter. It just has really fine, beautiful shimmer. Then we have the shade C-Note, which is described as a frosted green with micro glitter. This one is a dirty, kind of money green shade. It is a muted shade, like an olive green. It's really beautiful, has silver shimmer to it. Then we have the shade Arctic, which is described as a bright teal with tonal sparkle. This one is also beautiful. It reminds me of a Makeup Forever shade. It's a seafoam green, and it has silver sheen to it. Then we have the shade Robbery, which is described as a deep metallic brown gunmetal, which, what? It's a beautiful shade, has great pigmentation. Again, all these shades have great pigmentation, even the matte that takes a little building up, but they all work out pretty well. Moving on to the final row, we have the shade Bitter, which is described as a reddish brown matte. It is a matte orangey brown shade. It's really beautiful, great blendability, great pigmentation. Then we have the shade Flame, which is a beautiful shade. It's described as a bright orange with gold micro glitter, and it is truly sparkly and shimmery. It has great pigmentation, but it's a little chunky, so be mindful of it. Then we have the shade Low, which is described as a brown matte with iridescent micro glitter. This one is another chunky shade. It has serious fallout issues, and the base of it, the brown, is very sheer, so not the best shade. Then we have the shade Crowbar, which is described as a black with golden metallic pearl and micro glitter. This one is a smoother texture. It has micro glitter, does have fallout, but it's a much better shade. And then last up we have the shade Delete, which is described as a deep chestnut brown matte. This one is a matte, kind of a red toned brown shade, really beautiful. And again, there are 3 shades that are chunky. They have shimmer, they have glitter, they have fallout, but if you use a damp brush, they work a little better. And the 2 mattes in this row are really gorgeous and have great pigmentation. Alright, so now that you've seen the swatches, let's go ahead and look at the palette itself. It comes in this beautiful box here from Urban Decay with the colors on the back and the names, and then it says, "There's no such thing as too much Vice. We loaded this limited edition palette with 20 addictively gorgeous, never before seen shades of eyeshadow. Deep brights, smoky neutrals, gorgeous mattes from C Note, a pale metallic green, and Grip, a really beautiful smoky neutral, to Pandemonium, an amazing plum, and Deadbeat, a black satin that's like nothing we've ever done. This palette has it all. We even included a huge mirror, a double-ended brush, and a coordinating bag." So let's go ahead and take a look at the packaging, which I think most people can agree is gorgeously done. Urban Decay came out with a very sleek and really beautiful design this year. On the front of the palette, you have kind of a shattered glass effect, and it is a holographic color. So you'll see the colors go from a yellow gold to like a green to teal to a bright blue, and then on the actual edges of the palette you will see purples, blues, greens, golds again. It is really beautifully done. The front of the palette, this is actually an overlay, so be careful that you don't break the little webbings that it creates. And underneath it is a matte black, again another webbing design, so it gives this 3D effect. It's really beautiful. The back of the palette has the eyeshadow size, the name, and it's kind of a matte black finish. It is not a rubberized finish, it's still hard plastic, but it's nice and matte. So inside the palette you will find a full-sized mirror that extends the most of the length and width of the cover of the palette, and it does have a hinge, so it stops the mirror at about I would say 120 degree angle. So if you want to use this, it's actually very practical for you to use it to apply your makeup. You don't have to like hold the mirror upwards. It doesn't go a full 180 degrees, so just be mindful of that. I don't mind that. I actually like the hinged effect. And the actual closure is just magnetized. There's no clasp, there's no button for you to press to release the cover. It is just magnetized. And inside you have the 20 eyeshadows laid out in 4 rows of 5, and you do have that double-ended brush that I actually find to be quite useful. It is kind of a dual fiber brush with a flat eyeshadow shader side and then a blending side on the other end. I like the brushes in these palettes. They actually work out pretty well if you're in a pinch and you need to just grab a brush and go. And then the actual bag itself has a similar shattered glass design on it, but it is in silver, but it also has a holographic reflective effect. And then the bag is a matte black bag, and inside you can just slip your palette in. Inside we have a rubberized kind of canvas coating, so it should be easy to clean if you get makeup on it, and you zip it up and go. And I think this bag is great too if you just want to travel with your makeup in the bag itself instead of putting the palette in there. I think it's a nice bag. It feels like good quality. So the price of this palette is $60, and you get 20 eyeshadows at 0.03 ounces each. Even though on the Sephora website it says 0.6 ounces, that is not true. On the actual palette itself, on the actual packaging, it says 0.03. So you are getting less than a single eyeshadow from Urban Decay, which contains 0.05 ounces. So the regular singles has 0.05 and each of these eyeshadows are 0.03. And typically, I think Urban Decay usually gives you a full-sized eyeshadow, but this time around they didn't. But you have 20 eyeshadows in here, and like they said, it varies from deep bright, so you have bright shades but they have some depth to them. You have some metallic shades, you have smoky neutral shades. This palette screams holiday for me, and there are 4 mattes in this palette. So you have 2 highlight shades. Well, no, I think Framed is more of a satiny shade, but you have Discreet, Bitter, and Delete as mattes, and then the rest of them have some kind of shimmer level to them. You have high metallic sheen to that chunky glitter that Urban Decay is known for and they are hated for. So I wish they would stop including those chunky shades because they are nothing but a fallout mess. So you saw the swatches and you saw how the eyeshadows performed. Overall, I think most of the shades performed pretty well, except for the shade Grip, which is that top shade, that light silver taupe, and it has silver shimmer throughout it. It's just a failure. It's hard to pick up. You barely get any product. It's powdery, it's patchy, it's very dry, and then the glitter in it just doesn't work. The other shades, I didn't like Low. It is so chunky and it's too much. And then the other shade that really kicked up, well, these shades kicked up, Grasshopper, Flame, and Crowbar. And I'll show you what I mean by kicked up a lot of product. When you use your brush in the palette, you end up picking up so much product because it's chunky, they kind of flake off and go all over the place. And here's a look at the mess you can create from this palette. As you can see, the chunky shades they go all over the place. They make a mess. They fall all over the place. It's a fallout nightmare. And then they make the palette really messy and they intermingle with other shades so you can't keep the shades separate. It's just a mess. What I would recommend is if you get this palette because you like the colors in the palette, go ahead and use a damp brush. So you can use Fix Plus or you can use Smashbox Primer Water, which is what I love to use. Dampen your brush and then pick up the eyeshadows. It won't ruin the eyeshadows, the shimmer eyeshadows, because they can be used wet without damaging the product. And use that to apply your eyeshadow because it will minimize fallout and then it will make the eyeshadow actually smoother, blend really nicely, and give you super pigmentation. Overall, I actually like the palette, and you get 20 shades and only one is a major failure. Of course, I would still have to mix in matte shades from another palette or from my singles. It's just a really nice color selection for the holidays where you have jewel tones and you have pretty pops of color. Overall, I think it's a pricey palette, but I think you do get a lot. You get a double-ended brush. The eyeshadows though, be mindful, they're not stellar. They're not the most amazing eyeshadows you will try. You're gonna have fallout issue. You're gonna have to work at it. Plus you're gonna have to mix in your own mattes. And I wish there was a matte black in here, but we have matte blacks everywhere, so I don't mind so much. So really and truly, I would say it depends on how much you like the actual colors and the shades and how much you would use them. Again, I think this is an accessory palette. It's just an addition to your collection, not a basic palette. The packaging is really beautiful, and if you're a collector, it is beautiful to collect. So hopefully the swatches that I did and this video helped you decide if you're gonna check out this palette. I think it's priced pretty nicely against other palettes on the market this year. A lot of palettes are $59. You might get a little bit more eyeshadow colors or a selection, but it's relatively the same price. So this year I don't think it's so far-fetched or out of the price range for you to pick it up. So let me know if you guys are gonna check this out, if you're gonna pick it up, and what you think of the palette if you tried it already. As usual, I'll leave links to where you can purchase this and links to my Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook page where you can follow me along. And if you aren't already subscribed, hit the subscribe button, and it's right here, right here. Just hit that subscribe button so you can see more videos like this. And we're gonna continue with more swatches of other palettes, so definitely stay tuned, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!